They can't believe a black man is the CEO. Well, believe it. We are committed to fostering economic growth and opportunity for all members of our community.
Excuse me, sir. This area is for clients only. The teller's voice sliced through the quiet lobby, cold and dismissive. Marcus didn't have a chance to speak. His mistake? Standing in line while black, dressed in a suit worth more than her rent. Eyes darted, whispers rose, and a man by the counter angled his phone to record. None of them realized they were capturing the unraveling of a career, a reputation, and a billion-dollar institution, all in less than 15 minutes. While the branch manager, Patricia, barked orders to remove him, she failed to notice the weight of the name embossed on every company seal. The very name of the man she was humiliating now, the one with the power to end her career in a single breath. Tell me, have you ever seen arrogance turn into instant regret? The marble lobby shimmered beneath the noon sun, each tile reflecting 100 fractured glints of light. Marcus stood quietly in line, his posture calm, his briefcase angled neatly at his side. He looked like any other professional stopping by during a lunch break. Except to Patricia Henderson, the branch manager with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, he looked like trouble. "Sir, I already told you. This counter is for clients." Her voice carried, pitched just high enough for the crowd to hear. The line shifted. Some people averted their gaze while others leaned in, anticipating a scene. Phones lifted, subtle at first, then blatant. The glow of red record buttons spread through the lobby like a virus. Marcus inhaled, steady. He had walked into countless boardrooms where billions were decided. But here, among marble floors and hostile stares, his silence was being interpreted as guilt. He adjusted his cufflinks, diamonds catching the light, and said nothing. "Security?" Patricia snapped, her lips thin with disdain. "Remove this man before I call the police." Two guards approached, broad-shouldered and uncertain. Even they hesitated at the quiet authority in Marcus's stance. He didn't flinch, didn't argue. He simply opened his briefcase with deliberate calm and placed a folder on the counter. Its leather spine gleamed with a crest no one recognized. Patricia scoffed. "What's this supposed to be?" A young woman near the ATM zoomed her camera in, catching every second. The crowd hushed, the lobby holding its breath. Marcus finally spoke, his voice measured. "Before you call the police, you may want to read the name on that document." Patricia snatched it up. Her eyes flicked down and froze. Every ounce of color drained from her face. There, embossed in silver ink, was the name she saw daily, on memos, on paychecks, on every corporate banner. Marcus D. Williams, Chief Executive Officer. A ripple of gasps spread through the crowd. The guards stepped back, phones tilted higher, capturing Patricia's trembling hands as she stammered, This must be a mistake." But it wasn't, and everyone filming knew it. The lobby transformed in an instant. What began as whispers of accusation now swelled into a tide of realization. TikTok captions practically wrote themselves. "Bank manager tries to kick out CEO." Marcus leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady, powerful without raising his voice. "You've just insulted the man who signs your paycheck." Patricia's knees wavered. She gripped the counter to steady herself. The arrogance that once fueled her was gone, replaced by dawning terror. She glanced at the cameras. Too many, too close. Every word she had uttered, every sneer, every order was already immortalized online. "Mr. Williams, she began, voice cracking. "Don't." His single word silenced her. For a moment the marble lobby felt like a courtroom. The crowd became a jury, and Patricia Henderson, once in control, stood trial before millions she could not yet see. Marcus picked up the folder and tucked it neatly back into his briefcase. He turned to leave, but paused long enough to deliver a line that would echo across headlines within hours. "In 12 minutes, he said, your career ends. Not because of me, because of you." The silence shattered into murmurs, gasps, and frantic typing. Every witness knew they had just seen the opening act of a scandal that would burn through the corporate world like wildfire. As Marcus exited, The cameras followed him to the glass doors. Outside, the city hummed, unaware of the storm about to break. Inside, Patricia slumped against the counter, her phone buzzing with notifications she dared not read. She had destroyed herself, and the clock had just started. By the time Marcus stepped into the back seat of his waiting car, the incident was already everywhere. The young woman by the ATM had uploaded her video to TikTok before Patricia even realized she was trending. In less than 3 minutes, it hit 10,000 views. By the 5th minute, the number doubled. Hashtags flared across timelines. Bank while black, CEO checkmate, Patricia Henderson. Inside the branch, Patricia's phone buzzed uncontrollably. She ignored it at first, trying to regain control of the lobby. But every vibration was another nail in her coffin. Customers whispered, pointing. Some were already leaving, eager to catch the developing storm online rather than stand in a collapsing bank. Her assistant rushed over, pale and shaking. "Patricia, you need to see this." The video was on every platform. There she was, frozen, mid-sneer, ordering security to remove the very man whose name was printed above every branch door in the country. Millions were watching her downfall in real time. No, this can't be happening," Patricia whispered, clutching her temples. But it was, and Marcus hadn't even begun. In the sleek car gliding through downtown, Marcus watched the numbers climb on his own screen. His face remained calm, but his mind calculated. He didn't need revenge. He needed accountability, an example so powerful that no one in his organization, or any other, would dare repeat Patricia's mistake. "Take me to headquarters," he told his driver. The boardroom awaited. At the skyscraper's summit, 12 directors sat around an oval table of polished oak. Men and women who controlled billions leaned in, whispering about the video. Some had already received calls from investors. Others were hearing from journalists. When Marcus entered, silence fell. He carried no folder this time, no evidence needed. His presence alone was the gavel. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, setting his briefcase on the table. "By now you've all seen the footage." A director in a gray suit cleared his throat. "It's everywhere, Marcus. CNN, BBC, trending in 40 countries. Our stock dipped 2 points in an hour." Another director, a sharp-eyed woman, folded her arms. "What's our move? Fire her quietly? Issue a statement?" Marcus shook his head. "No, quiet won't work anymore. This isn't about one employee. It's about the culture that allowed her arrogance to flourish." Patricia, escorted into the room moments later, looked nothing like the domineering manager from the lobby. Her hair clung to her damp forehead, her blazer wrinkled from trembling hands. Cameras weren't here, but she knew the eyes of the world still were. "Mr. Williams, please," she stammered. "I didn't know." "That's the point," Marcus interrupted. His voice was steady, controlled. "You didn't care to know. You saw a black man in a suit and assumed threat instead of leadership. And now your ignorance has become our crisis." The board watched in silence. Some pitied her. Others didn't bother hiding their disgust. Marcus continued, pacing slowly around the table. This institution was built on trust, on the promise that every client, regardless of appearance, is treated with respect. Today, that trust was broken in the most public way possible. Patricia clasped her hands. I'll resign quietly, if you'll allow me that dignity." Marcus paused, then leaned close enough for his words to slice through her desperation. "Dignity is earned, Patricia. And you lost yours the moment you called security on me." Her knees buckled. She sank into a chair, trembling. Across the city, televisions replayed the viral clip on loop. Anchors debated systemic bias in corporate America. Hashtags turned into headlines. Protesters gathered outside local branches, chanting for reform. The scandal had outgrown Patricia. It was now a reckoning for the entire banking empire. Marcus knew this wasn't about humiliation anymore. It was about history. And he intended to write it. As he dismissed Patricia from the boardroom, her face pale and broken, he addressed his directors. "This is no longer just a personnel issue. This is our opportunity to lead or to collapse. The world is watching, and they will judge us not by what she did, but by what we do next." Silence hung heavy. Then, one by one, the directors nodded. Marcus sat, folding his hands on the table. Prepare for reform. We begin immediately. And with that, the downfall of Patricia Henderson became the catalyst for something far greater. A revolution that would shake not only the bank, but the entire financial industry. By evening, the story was no longer just a viral clip. It was the headline dominating every network. CNN labeled it, "Banking While Black, CEO Humiliated by His Own Manager." The BBC called it, "The 13 Minutes That Shook Wall Street." In Lagos, Johannesburg, London, and New York, the video played on repeat. Outside the branch, news vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Protesters carried signs demanding justice, chanting Patricia's name alongside the bank's logo. Customers closed accounts in droves. Every tweet, every share, every replay carved another wound into the institution's reputation. Inside headquarters, Marcus knew silence was no longer an option. The boardroom was packed again, this time with public relations chiefs, attorneys, and senior executives. Their faces were pale, eyes red from hours of crisis management. "We need a statement," one executive urged. "Deny knowledge, blame her, distance ourselves from the incident." Marcus's gaze swept the room. "No, we won't run from this. We confront it." He stood at the head of the table, every camera in the room trained on him. A press conference was moments away, and the world waited for his words. Patricia sat in the corner, reduced to a shadow of her former self. Security had insisted she attend for official termination procedures, though her presence only deepened the tension. Her phone buzzed non-stop, messages of hate, ridicule, and disbelief filling her screen. The once commanding manager was now a global villain. "Patricia Henderson," Marcus said, his voice resonant, "you are hereby terminated, effective immediately." The cameras caught her collapse into sobs. Gasps echoed across the room as the announcement streamed live to millions. But Marcus didn't stop there. "This isn't about one employee," he continued. "This is about an entire system of bias that has gone unchecked. Today we draw a line. This institution will no longer tolerate prejudice in any form. We are launching a full-scale reform. Audits, training, oversight, and accountability measures, effective immediately." Reporters scribbled furiously. Some live-streamed his every word, their viewers flooding chat boxes with applause and fire emojis. The crowd outside roared approval as the press conference fed onto giant screens mounted on vans. Marcus's calm authority contrasted with Patricia's collapse. Where she crumbled, he rose. Where she tried to excuse, he declared responsibility. The power dynamic was undeniable and unforgettable. Within hours, the internet crowned him a hero. Memes exploded. Marcus's face photoshopped onto superheroes, captions like "signs your own paycheck" and "boss moves only." On TikTok, creators stitched the original clip with his press conference, applauding his poise. Patricia, meanwhile, became a cautionary tale. Old photos of her surfaced, spliced into mocking edits. Headlines dissected her downfall. From manager to meme in 13 minutes. Recruiters blacklisted her. Former co-workers leaked stories of her arrogance. Every corner of the internet turned her name into shorthand for failure. But Marcus wasn't celebrating. He sat alone in his office, city lights twinkling through the glass, reflecting on the gravity of the moment. His phone rang non-stop, politicians, activists, celebrities offering support. Yet he knew applause wasn't enough. If change was to last, it needed to be institutional, not performative. He drafted plans deep into the night. Mandatory anti-bias training, transparent promotion pipelines, anonymous reporting systems. For every cruel sneer like Patricia's, Marcus wanted a safeguard to prevent the next humiliation. By midnight, the bank's official site carried his statement. Bold and uncompromising. Respect is not optional. Equality is not negotiable. And leadership is not blind to injustice. The message reverberated across industries. Other corporations scrambled to review their own practices, terrified of becoming the next viral cautionary tale. Congress announced hearings. Advocacy groups praised Marcus for transforming personal insult into corporate revolution. Patricia sat in her dark apartment, curtains drawn, phone abandoned on the floor. The chants from protesters outside echoed faintly through her windows. Her name, once commanding obedience in her branch, was now cursed across continents. She scrolled one last time, seeing her face frozen in that sneer, replayed endlessly. Have you ever watched someone destroy themselves with their own prejudice? The rhetorical question from the video's caption cut deeper than any headline. For Patricia, the answer was yes. For Marcus, it was only the beginning. The next morning, the sun rose over a city still buzzing with protest chants and news alerts. Helicopters hovered above, capturing aerial shots of crowds outside bank branches across the nation. Customers streamed in not to deposit, but to withdraw. Overnight, billions had been pulled from accounts. The message was clear. People weren't waiting for promises. They demanded proof. Marcus arrived at headquarters flanked by advisors, his stride unshaken despite the chaos. Every eye followed him as though he were walking into battle. "Sir, we've lost 12% of deposits since last night," the CFO whispered urgently. "If this continues, we'll be insolvent in weeks." Marcus nodded. "Then we pivot. This is no longer just damage control. This is reinvention." He called a global live stream, broadcasting not only to customers but to anyone willing to listen. The cameras clicked on, and once again, the world held its breath. "I know you're angry," he began, voice steady but charged with conviction. "And you should be. What you saw wasn't a slip. It was a symptom. This bank has operated on outdated systems, unchecked arrogance, and quiet prejudice. No more." Behind him, a massive digital screen lit up with 3 words: transparency, equality, accountability. These aren't slogans. They're policies. Effective immediately, every executive, including myself, will undergo independent bias audits. Every promotion will be reviewed by an outside committee. And for every dollar we invest in expansion, we'll invest $1 in communities too often ignored. The feed exploded. Hashtags multiplied. Bank on Justice, Williams Way, Equality Now. Civil rights leaders tweeted endorsements. Fortune 500 CEOs scrambled to draft their own pledges before markets opened. Meanwhile, Patricia's downfall deepened. Tabloids dug up her past reprimands, ignored complaints from tellers, questionable remarks buried in HR files. Former colleagues leaked audio clips of her mocking customers. Each revelation painted her not as a scapegoat but as the inevitable face of a culture too long ignored. But Marcus refused to let the scandal rest on her shoulders alone. "This isn't about Patricia Henderson," he declared in the live stream. "It's about every leader who looked away, every system that rewarded arrogance over empathy, every company that thought prejudice could stay hidden. We are changing, not because of one woman's downfall, but because silence is no longer an option." By afternoon, crowds outside the headquarters weren't just protesting, they were celebrating. Chants shifted from anger to hope. Vendors sold T-shirts emblazoned with Marcus's quotes. Street artists painted murals of him shaking hands with community members. The board, initially skeptical, now saw no alternative. Shareholders demanded reform, and Marcus's plan offered the only lifeline. Stocks dipped, then began to recover as analysts predicted the bank's rebirth could set a precedent across industries. Journalists compared Marcus to historic reformers, calling him the CEO who turned humiliation into revolution. Students quoted his speech in classrooms. Churches played clips of his declaration during Sunday services. Patricia watched it all unfold from exile, her inbox filled with book offers, interview requests, even reality TV pitches. But every attempt to reclaim dignity collapsed under the weight of the footage. The world wasn't interested in her excuses. It wanted her silence. Marcus, meanwhile, expanded his campaign. He called on rival banks, tech giants, and government regulators to adopt his 3 pillars. Some resisted. Others panicked, afraid of being the next scandal. Within weeks, congressional committees invited Marcus to testify. He walked into Capitol Hill not as a victim, but as an architect of change. "I'm not here to shame corporations," he told lawmakers. "I'm here to challenge them. You can either wait for your viral moment of failure, or you can lead now. Equality isn't charity, it's good business. And history is watching." Applause thundered through the chamber. The scandal that began in a marble lobby had become a movement written into policy. Banks pledged billions to equity programs. Universities added Marcus's speeches to leadership curriculums. Nonprofits hailed him as proof that power could be used for justice. And yet Marcus stayed grounded. In private, he still replayed that first humiliating moment, being dismissed, threatened, treated as less than human in a building he owned. That wound fueled him, reminding him why change mattered, because prejudice wasn't just Patricia's downfall. It was an entire system's wake-up call, and Marcus intended to make sure the world never forgot it. For every cheer echoing Marcus's name, there was a whisper plotting his downfall. In boardrooms far from the cameras, rival CEOs seethed. What Marcus framed as equality, they saw as disruption. If his reforms caught on, their empires, built on silence and favoritism, would crumble. "He's making us look weak," snarled one executive of a competing bank, his fist slamming against a mahogany table. "Bias audits? Community investments? That's billions down the drain. If shareholders think this is the future, we're finished." Within days, a quiet alliance formed. Lobbyists leaned on senators. Think tanks published op-eds calling Marcus performative. Anonymous accounts seeded doubt on social media. Was Marcus just exploiting outrage for power? Could his reforms survive market realities? The storm swirled louder when a leaked memo, origin unknown, claimed the bank's reforms would slash profits by 40%. Headlines screamed, "Reform or ruin." Stock prices wavered again, skeptics circling like vultures. Marcus read every headline, but his focus never shifted. In the war room at headquarters, maps of public opinion sprawled across screens. Advisors warned, "The backlash is coordinated. They want to paint you as reckless." "We need to defend." Marcus shook his head. "We don't defend. We double down." He traveled city to city, holding town halls not in boardrooms but in community centers, churches, even high school gyms. Crowds packed the halls, chanting his name. Mothers told stories of loans denied for no reason. Young professionals described being ignored at counters, just as Marcus had been. Each testimony reinforced his crusade, but cameras also captured the protests against him. Detractors waved signs. "Stick to banking, not politics." Anchors on business networks called him a grandstander. One panelist sneered, "This isn't justice, it's theater. You don't fix prejudice with press conferences." Patricia's defenders even emerged, a small but loud faction claiming she was unfairly scapegoated. She gave her first interview to a fringe network, her voice trembling as she painted herself as the true victim. "I was following protocol," she said. "I was protecting staff. They twisted everything. Now my life is ruined." The clip spread, fueling arguments. To some, Marcus was a hero. To others, he was a tyrant. Behind closed doors, the pressure mounted. Investors demanded numbers. Regulators scrutinized every line of his reform plan. Anonymous threats landed in Marcus's inbox. "Step down or we'll bury you." His advisors begged caution. "Scale it back, Marcus. Give them half. A compromise will buy us time." But Marcus refused. "Compromise is what built this rot. I won't sell half measures." One night, staring at the skyline, he confided to a close friend, "This isn't just about a bank anymore. It's about every black kid who walks into a lobby and is treated like I was. If I stop now, I betray them." The battle lines hardened. On one side, Marcus, communities, activists, and a new generation hungry for change. On the other, entrenched power, rival institutions, and a media machine eager for cracks in his armor. The climax came at a shareholders' emergency meeting, broadcast live to millions. Executives lined up microphones, their speeches sharp with accusation. "You've destroyed shareholder value," one barked. "You've politicized our brand," another accused. This bank isn't your soapbox. Marcus let them vent. Then he rose. Shareholder value? He repeated slowly. Tell me, what's the value of trust? What's the cost of dignity? You think short-term profits are worth more than human respect? Then you don't understand the future. Customers will not bank with institutions that humiliate them. Investors will not stay in companies destined for scandal. Equality isn't a liability. It's survival. The room erupted in chaos, boos, applause, shouting. But the live stream outside told a different story. Millions watched, enthralled. Social media exploded again. Stand with Marcus trended worldwide. The vote was razor-thin. Marcus kept his mandate, barely. He walked out of that room scarred but unbroken, aware the war had only just begun. Because now his fight wasn't only against prejudice, it was against power itself. The morning after the shareholder vote, headlines called it everything from a narrow escape to the most divisive CEO in America. Analysts predicted collapse. Rivals gloated. Yet outside headquarters, the crowd was larger than ever. They weren't chanting in anger anymore. They were chanting in hope. William's way. William's way! Marcus stepped out onto the balcony, looking down at the sea of faces. Some held homemade signs, others waved their phones high, streaming live. For the first time since the scandal began, Marcus allowed himself a smile. The people had chosen their side. Inside, however, pressure intensified. Competitors launched smear campaigns. Anonymous leaks dripped into the press, questioning Marcus's past, twisting his words. One editorial snarled, "Marcus Williams is less a banker than a preacher with a balance sheet." But Marcus refused to be baited. Instead, he doubled his pace. He invited civil rights leaders, economists, and tech innovators into think tanks, drafting a blueprint for corporate accountability. His message, reform wasn't optional, it was inevitable. Every scandal leaves a scar, Marcus told them. The question is whether that scar warns others or whether it festers. We are turning ours into a warning and a map. Weeks later, Congress summoned him again, this time not as a witness to humiliation, but as a visionary. Cameras rolled as Marcus laid out his proposal, independent audits for all Fortune 500. Companies, transparent. Promotion systems with external oversight, public. Reporting of diversity metrics, severe. Penalties for institutions caught covering bias. Lawmakers leaned in. Some nodded. Even skeptics admitted his blueprint was hard to dismiss. "You're asking us to rewrite the playbook for corporate America," one senator remarked. Marcus didn't blink. "No, I'm asking you to catch up with reality. Because the people already have." Outside Washington, the dominoes began to fall. Tech companies announced bias audits before the government could mandate them. Airlines pledged community reinvestment. Insurance giants launched diversity initiatives overnight. None wanted to be the next Patricia Henderson headline. The movement spread overseas. European regulators cited Marcus's reforms in new policy drafts. African and Asian banks invited him to keynote conferences. His speeches were translated into dozens of languages. His quotes painted on murals from Johannesburg to Jakarta. Marcus had become more than a CEO. He was a symbol, but symbols invite enemies. Patricia, still ostracized, made one last desperate attempt to reclaim relevance. She sued the bank, alleging wrongful termination, discrimination against her as a woman, and psychological torture from the viral storm. Her lawsuit made headlines, giving Marcus's critics ammunition. "See?" Pundits crowed. He destroyed her life to save his own. Marcus's legal team prepared for battle, but Marcus himself remained calm. "She's not the enemy," he said quietly to his lawyers. "She's the lesson." When the case hit court, Patricia crumbled under evidence. Recordings, witness testimony, internal complaints she had buried. The jury deliberated only 3 hours before dismissing her claims entirely. The verdict was clear. Patricia hadn't been punished unfairly. She had been protected for too long. The victory was decisive. Overnight, Marcus's critics lost their sharpest weapon. Stock prices rebounded as investors realized reforms weren't destroying the bank. They were rebuilding it stronger. Enrollment in new community lending programs tripled. Surveys showed record customer trust. At the next shareholder meeting, the atmosphere was unrecognizable. Instead of hostility, there was applause. Executives who once sneered now nodded respectfully. Rivals who had mocked him rushed to imitate his policies. Marcus stood before them, not as a man defending his survival, but as a leader charting the future. "We began with humiliation," he said. "We endured backlash, and now we stand on the edge of transformation. This bank will not only survive, it will lead, and others will follow." The room rose to its feet. Investors, employees, even journalists clapped. Later that night, Marcus sat in his office, the city glowing beneath him. His reflection stared back from the glass, weary but unbroken. He thought of the marble lobby where it began, of Patricia's sneer, of the laughter and whispers. In 13 minutes, his life had shifted. But in the months that followed, he had shifted the world. And for the first time, he felt that maybe, just maybe, the weight of injustice was beginning to lift. Months later, the marble lobby where it all began looked different. The chandeliers still sparkled, the floors still gleamed, but the atmosphere had shifted. Posters lined the walls. Respect, equality, accountability. Tellers greeted customers with warmth, their training refreshed, their awareness sharpened. A grandmother walked in with her grandson, smiling as she pointed at a poster of Marcus's face beside a quote, "Respect is not optional." The boy whispered, "That's the man who changed everything." Marcus himself stood quietly in the corner, unnoticed at first. He often visited branches unannounced, not to test staff but to remind himself why he fought. This time he watched a young teller help an immigrant family open their first account, patiently explaining every detail. No hesitation, no suspicion, just dignity. It was the future Marcus had envisioned, and it was real. On the global stage, his influence only grew. Universities built courses around his reforms. Governments cited his blueprint as a model for corporate ethics. Activists used his story as a rallying cry, proof that even entrenched power could be bent toward justice. But Marcus knew movements weren't about one man. At a summit in Geneva, he told world leaders, "Don't turn me into a statue. Statues gather dust. Build systems. Build policies. Build cultures that outlast any one name." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Marcus remained grounded. He returned home, where his mother's voice, steady and wise, reminded him daily, "You've built something bigger than yourself. Don't forget to live your own life too." For the first time in years, he took her advice. He reconnected with old friends, spent evenings in jazz clubs, and rediscovered the joy of walking city streets without cameras trailing him. Patricia, meanwhile, faded into obscurity. After losing her lawsuit, her name became a cautionary tale taught in corporate seminars. The Henderson Effect: How Bias Can Destroy Not Only Careers, but Institutions. She declined interviews, her once commanding presence erased from the industry she thought she owned. Marcus never gloated. He mentioned her rarely, and when he did, it was with measured reflection. "She wasn't unique," he'd say. "She was the symptom of a sickness we chose to cure." The true measure of his legacy came one quiet afternoon. Marcus received a letter, handwritten in careful script. "Mr. Williams, my son is studying finance because of you. He saw what happened to you, and instead of being afraid, he said, 'I want to be like him.' You turned his fear into ambition. Thank you." Marcus read the letter twice, his chest tight. For all the speeches, reforms, and headlines, it was this, a child's future reshaped, that defined success. At the next annual shareholder meeting, Marcus addressed the audience with a calmness that carried no edge of defense, only vision. "A year ago I was thrown out of my own branch. 13 minutes of prejudice nearly cost us everything. But those 13 minutes also gave us clarity. We saw what we could lose if we failed to change, and what we could build if we chose courage." He paused, scanning the room. Investors leaned forward, employees held their breath, cameras zoomed in. We are no longer a bank that fears scandal. We are a bank that creates trust. We are not just numbers on a balance sheet. We are people, serving people, and we will lead the future of finance by never forgetting that. The standing ovation lasted minutes. That night, walking home under the glow of city lights, Marcus thought of the journey. Humiliation to triumph, whispers to applause, a single viral video to global reform. He knew the fight wasn't over. Prejudice didn't vanish overnight. Power didn't surrender easily. But he also knew something had shifted. The world had witnessed what happens when silence is broken, when injustice is confronted, when dignity is defended. And it all began with a voice in a marble lobby saying, "Security. Get this man out of here," Marcus smiled. Because now, the world knew better. One viral moment can topple walls built over decades. One recorded injustice can dismantle policies meant to exclude. What happened in that lobby wasn't just about Marcus. It was about every person who has ever been reduced to a stereotype. And now, the responsibility rests with you. Every day, someone's future is being decided not by merit, but by prejudice. Every day, someone is being told silently or loudly, "You don't belong." But silence is complicity. Your voice, your phone, your willingness to speak up. These are the tools Patricia Henderson never imagined would hold her accountable. When you witness bias, don't look away. When you see someone humiliated, don't stay silent. Record it, share it, demand better. Because Marcus proved something history will never forget. Humiliation can spark change, courage can rewrite culture, and one person's dignity defended can ignite justice for millions.